It's time to share secrets and insights from fellow entrepreneurs. If you're looking to grow or start a business and you're a game changer, then keep listening to Avanti Entrepreneur for great advice from your host, Dave Mammano, America's entrepreneur coach.
Hey, Avanti Tribe, Dave Mammano here. Just want to thank our sponsor, Paychex. You know, Paychex, they make it simple for businesses of all sizes to pay and manage their team. They make payroll easy with employee pay options, including direct deposit, checks, pay cards, and so much more. Founded over 4 decades ago to relieve the complexity of running a business so that the owners can focus on what matters most. Above all else, and more than any other company, Paychex makes it simple. Visit AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Go to our partner link and check them out. They're offering you a free month of payroll just for giving them a shot as an Avanti Tribe member. Give them a shot, folks. They really help this podcast to be possible. Really appreciate Paychex. Now, enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Dave Mammano, your host. I'm here to help you move forward. The way we do that with Avanti, first of all, Avanti means move forward. So that's what we're going to do today with my fabulous guest, Kristen Hadeed. Kristen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. So I always say in the intro that I help our Avanti tribe move forward by really interviewing people that are just who I feel are complete rock stars. And I got to tell you, I heard from about 5 of my friends in Rochester that you gave a keynote about a month and a half ago, and I was supposed to go to this conference, couldn't make it, and I was getting texts and calls like, you have to have Kristen on your show. And so for me, that qualifies as an instant rock star. So congratulations on what you're doing with your keynotes, and we're going to learn more about what you're doing with your life and your business.
Thank you.
So Kristen Hadeed, right now we're talking to you from Houston.
Yep.
You also are in Florida, and it sounds like you are just doing a lot of great things, including traveling.
Yes, a lot of traveling.
A lot of keynotes. So you were here in Rochester. You were speaking the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce and Innovative Solutions. Got together and put together a conference, and they asked you to be the keynote. And so why don't we just start with that, if you don't mind?
Sure.
You know, I'm sure you do many different talks, but what was that keynote about? How did that help people?
Yeah. So, we had such a great time together. I just launched a book last year, October of last year. So almost a little over a year ago, called Permission to Screw Up. And the keynote in Rochester was about the message in the book, which, is really the story of how I built my company and how I learned that the way that you actually learn in business is by doing everything wrong and by failing and screwing up. Yet when you meet other entrepreneurs and you meet successful people and you talk to them about their journeys, sometimes we don't open up about what's not going well, but it's very easy for us to share what's going, great. And so for a long time, I felt very lonely in my business. And as a leader, I felt like I was making all these mistakes. Yet I would compare myself to these other people who I didn't think were making any. Now I know that they were too, but just we weren't talking about it. So the message was, let's give ourselves permission to screw up. Let's also talk about our screw ups so that the people around us don't feel alone and feel like they also have permission to get it wrong and figure it out.
Oh my God. I'm so glad we're recording this because I love what you just said. And I love the title of your book, Permission to Screw Up, because we're so hard on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I remember starting out as an entrepreneur and I would see all these successful people and I would feel like such a loser because I wasn't there yet and I would mess up. And little that I know, those entrepreneurs, they all messed up, continue to mess up, and that is okay. And another thing you said too is you felt like you were alone, and frankly, that's why we started Avanti. And one of our taglines is "Don't go at it alone," because being an entrepreneur can be oh so lonely. And even if you have 50 employees, they don't know what you're going through, right? They're not waking up at 3 a.m. about payroll, et cetera. So just to whether it's Avanti, a lot of other groups out there, just finding some way to surround yourself with like-minded peers to help you through those tough times. So I love it. So thank you for writing that book. We'll put it in the show notes, Permission to Screw Up, and I'm sure it's on Amazon and Audible and all that good stuff, right?
You got it.
So thank you for coming to Rochester for that conference. I'm sure you met Bob Duffy, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and
Yes.
and Justin Copey from Innovative
Yep.
Solutions, another really great, literally innovative guy. And then I got to thank Ron Willie. Ron was the first guy in the audience to text me while you were speaking and say, Dave, I have your next guest. Yeah, thank you, Ron Willie. He said, Dave, I have your next guest. I'm like, awesome. So let's back up, because I know you're doing some great work with Simon Sinek and the whole Start With Why movement, and that's part of your speaking. I want to get to that. Let's back up first into the beginning stages of how you became an entrepreneur. What were you doing? What are you doing? And maybe tell us about that journey.
Yeah. So I think if you were to ask my parents, they say they knew I was always destined to be an entrepreneur. I had all these little businesses as a kid, but personally, I never thought that would be the route I'd take. I went to college at the University of Florida, thought I'd work on Wall Street, was studying finance, and didn't really love what I was studying, but at the time it was all about making money. That's what I thought success was. And I knew you made a good salary working on Wall Street. I would have been terrible on Wall Street, by the way.
Right.
But here I am in college. I was 19 years old and didn't have any money and wanted to figure out a way to make some side money, and started cleaning houses, put an ad on Craigslist, and this woman miraculously hired me. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, it was a complete disaster, but she needed help. So she hired me to come every week and taught me how to clean. And it was like the perfect storm. And so she told her friends about me.
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but did you just say, like, the woman that hired you to clean taught you how to clean?
Oh yeah. I had no idea she had a 4,000 square foot house, and I only brought a sponge and a bottle of Windex to clean her. So she, I think she just saw that I had a good work ethic, but I didn't really maybe know how to.
Classic example of jump off the cliff and building the airplane on the way down, right?
Yeah, figure it out as you go. So her name, Melinda, she's an amazing woman. So she taught me how to clean, told her friends about me. And next thing I knew, I was cleaning every day. And it was hard. It was exhausting. And looked to my friends to see if they wanted to help out. Were not interested at all. Got this contract to clean hundreds of empty apartments. And this was really the turning point. This was 21. And it was the summer right before my senior year. 800 and something college apartments. I had 21 days to do the work.
Wow. Didn't
have anyone really working with me. So put another ad out on Craigslist to hire people. Hired 60 students. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have leadership experience, business experience. I had no idea how to keep people motivated. Well, I mean, they're cleaning dirty toilets. It's like the worst job I think that you could ever have.
Sure.
And it was a complete mess. 45 of the 60 quit 3 days in.
Oh my God. It's hard work. It's hard work.
Same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I didn't know how to be a leader. So they felt like I didn't really care about them. I didn't even know their names. I mean, I was clueless as a leader, just sitting in this chair, comfortable chair, checking my phone, ordering lunch, while they're out cleaning these filthy apartments. So 45 walked out, and looking back, I realized that was the moment for me that changed everything and changed the whole trajectory of my life, because it was that moment that did two things for me. One, I became obsessed with learning how to be a leader, and it was something I really wanted to figure out. And two, I became obsessed with wanting to build a company where people really wanted to be, even though the kind of work we were doing was the kind of work that no one wants to do. And it was that excitement of that challenge that I think made me keep going. And so I actually got the 45 people back. It sounds
all 45.
All 45. We had an emergency meeting at my house that night, promised everyone an early paycheck if they showed up. Mm-hmm. And they did. And I just apologized and unintentionally was vulnerable, unintentionally admitted, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this without you. And I think they saw me as a human and they wanted to give me a chance. And so they came back, we finished the contract, and the rest was history. I turned down a job in finance. I was making no money. Everything I was making, I had to put back into the business, but I was just so excited about this challenge. And so now it's been 11 years. My company, Student Maid, we still hire primarily students, but that could mean high school students, college students, PhD students, cosmetology students. I mean, it doesn't matter. We do have people who are not students as well. We still clean.
But they could be a student of life.
Student of life. We love students of life. And yeah, it's been 11 years. We've employed thousands of people. I'm so grateful that I would have never lasted on Wall Street, but it's been really hard, because the industry has a 75% turnover rate is the average. So you're up against that, low margins. So you don't have a lot of money to pay people what they really deserve to be paid, and raises and promotions. And, and a lot of in our business, it's young people, it's their first job. Many don't know how to clean. So it's just all these challenges it's like a tornado. And if I wanted my business to survive, I'd have to figure it out, but it meant really getting it wrong a lot to figure it out. And I still haven't quite figured it out.
Well, it is a journey, right?
Yes.
But so many questions. I guess the thought of me, or just, I guess, the thought of corralling on an ongoing basis all these thousands of students to train them and trust them to clean, and that it's transient because they're graduating, et cetera. Maybe some stay with you for a few years, but I have to imagine it's very, kind of revolving door. Just the thought of managing all that gives me an anxiety attack. I think I'm getting hives, and it seems like whack-a-mole on steroids. So, I mean, how have you figured out how to really manage this? It sounds like a cluster, to manage all of those students. So, but it sounds like you figured it out. So, do you have a kind of a process you like to share with us? I mean, how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, well, this is something I talked about when I was in Rochester, but as the business grew, I was the only one really working full time. Everyone else that I had on the team, they were students. So I was wearing every hat. And for those of you listening and watching, I know you know the feeling. You're doing everything in your business. You are literally wearing every hat, and it's exhausting. And also you're working in the business, which means you can't work on the business, and you can't work on growing it and figuring out, the strategy for how you want to grow and move forward. And I was really afraid that people couldn't do it like me. So part of the reason why I was wearing every hat, I could have delegated things. I could have recruited other people to help me, but I worried, they don't have experience. This is my reputation. This is my name. I don't want to risk that or jeopardize that. Well, I learned that you can't grow a business that way. And there was this one situation in particular where I went on my first vacation, and this was like 2 years after being so full-time. I needed a vacation. I was so afraid to leave. I made this book for my team of like everything that could possibly go wrong and exactly how to handle it if it goes wrong. And they wanted me to have peace and quiet. So they're like, go, we won't bother you. And as I'm on the plane, I get this text that there's a complete disaster and they need me to call them right away. And I can't because the flight attendant is looking at me and the plane's about to take off. So I'm not able to answer the phone. And the whole flight, I remember thinking, my business is ruined. It's gone. It's burned to the ground. It's it. And I landed, called the team, and someone had gotten hurt. And of course I prepared them on what to do in that situation. Luckily the person was okay, but she was hurt and she was refusing to get help and go to the clinic, which I never thought that would even happen. But because I was not available, the team had no choice but to figure it out. They called our workers' comp company. They were able to get her to a clinic. They figured it out, and they were so proud to tell me. And that was a huge moment as well for me, because it was the first time I had ever heard anyone be proud. And I told myself, that's what leadership sounds like. I think you're supposed to generate this feeling more often. And so I realized I had great people, capable people, brilliant people, but I was the one that was getting in their way. So I think, yes, the business is, at times it can be really crazy and chaotic. Yes, there's so many people, but I think the reason that we are at the point we're at is because I've really been hands off. And my mentality is, can't keep people in bubble wrap. You have to trust them with enormous responsibilities, even before they've proven that they're capable of handling them, even if it means maybe they'll mess up, because it's the only way you can grow a business. If your people aren't growing and learning, the business is not growing. So I have a pretty high screw up tolerance. And I think that's a question you have to ask yourself, what is your screw up tolerance, and what are you willing to say, I even if the person doesn't do it like me, I'm willing to be hands off, because it's the only way you can transition from working in the business to working on it, I think.
Right. So what a great, experience that you had with being on that plane, and you couldn't help them, and they were forced to figure it out on their own. So that seems like it was a big moment for you, a learning moment for you, to say, I have to pretend I'm on the plane more often, so they have to figure it out. And I like what you said too, that you can't keep them in bubble wrap. That sounds like your next book title or something.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
And like some parents should do that for their kids too, but that's a whole nother story, right?
Yes.
So how many students do you have working for you on an ongoing basis today?
So it fluctuates. And something else I learned, I'm glad you brought this up, because I always thought that the larger your business was, the more employees you had, it meant that you were more successful.
Yep.
And so I found myself growing the company, not because I wanted to, not because I felt like it was the best move for us, but because I thought that's what we had to do to continue to be successful, which meant taking on contracts that were enormous, which meant opening another location. And over time, I realized that the culture had changed. And the one thing that I believe we really have gotten right at Student Maid is the culture. People love coming to work, even though they're cleaning toilets. And I walked into the office and I just one day noticed, this is not the company that I built. And this is not the company that I even want to work at. This is what happened here. And I realized that it was our growth. So we've actually scaled down. We've had to terminate, contracts that we just felt weren't serving us, and people who weren't treating our employees well, who were in turn not happy with their jobs because they felt like the company didn't care about them if they're going to work for these clients who don't treat them well. We made some hard choices there, but the culture is better than it's ever been. And so whereas in the past we may have had 500-600 on the team, our whole company now very often is less than 100. And so I think what is important there is don't grow because you think that's the next move. Grow because it's something you really want to do. Be strategic about it. We've decided to grow in other ways. What we want to do now is teach companies how to create the kind of culture that we've created. And we spend a lot of our time doing that. And actually it's very profitable and brings in a lot of revenue. And so there are other ways to grow where you don't have to lose the culture that you built and that you love. And I just wish that's a huge mistake, one of many that I've made over the last 11 years.
So I'm trying to do the math. You said, you were in college about 11 years ago. So early 30s?
I'm 30. Yeah.
You're 30. All right.
I'm 30.
I'm kind of good at math. Not really. But I bring that up because you are so wise for being pretty young. And a lot of people don't learn that until later. And I think you nailed it on the head. Two things: that don't grow for growth's sake because it can lead to a lot of misery. Yeah. And that culture is number one, right? Peter Drucker, Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast. I love it.
Absolutely.
And just to expound on that, so I'm part of this organization called Small Giants, and
I love Small Giants.
Oh yeah, I was going to say you should. I was going to send you info, and so I was one of the founding members, and Ari Weinswig, we had at his place in Zingerman's, and one of my favorite people, and it's all about not growing for growth's sake, but yeah, you can grow, but make sure that you're not sacrificing the reasons and the why of why you got into the business in the first place. And
absolutely,
a lot of people, and you realize that this is not what I wanted. And so you kind of took a Control Alt Delete to everything and rebooted, right?
Yeah.
And if you know Ari Weinswig from Zingerman's, they grew this deli in Ann Arbor, and it was like a Jewish bakery deli, and within a few years, lines out the door. And so his partner said, hey, we got a franchise. And Ari said, the thought of watered down corned beef pastrami sandwiches breaks my heart. I don't want a franchise. So they decided to say, all right, well, let's expand a different way, like you did. And what they did is they expanded in Ann Arbor with different food related businesses. So they didn't sacrifice their why. They were able to control the experience in their city. And I think they're up to 15 to 20 Zingerman related businesses now, candy store. They even open up training. They have a restaurant. I mean, there's so many bakeries still. And so I love that philosophy. Right. And then, the second thing you talked about is culture. And my favorite thing in the world, my previous business was a national magazine for teenagers, and I had a fair amount of employees. Culture was always my favorite thing. I wrote a book and did a TEDx talk called "Make Love in the Workplace."
Oh, I love it.
It came out about 4 years ago. I don't know if I could use that title today.
Yeah.
But I wanted a head turner.
Yeah.
And so important. We here in Rochester, I don't know if you had a chance when you were here to visit Wegmans, but Wegmans is one of the best grocery stores in the.
I love Wegmans.
Yeah, it's always in the top list of
Yeah.
consumer reports, and it's only in the Northeast, right? But they're 100 years old, and since day one they really pride themselves on putting their team, their employees first, because they know if they get the culture right, it's going to ripple to everything else, the customers, the vendors, the profits, everything, and that's why I go into Wegmans and I visit the cheese store, and that manager has been to France and Italy, and they're so passionate about cheese, and before you know it, I'm spending $20 a pound on this rare Cape cheese from Spain, and I'm like, because and so it worked, right, starting with the culture first. So
can we talk about culture for a little bit?
I would love to. You did it. I know you did a TED talk, and you got like over 2 million views on that, which I'm going to watch because I read it in your bio. Was that about culture as well? Because I'm going to watch it right after this.
I wish they would take that one off the internet. That was like, it's not really about culture. It's about being an entrepreneur. And it was so long ago. And I'm pretty sure like 1.8 million of the 2 million are my parents. Don't watch it. I'm just kidding. Watch it if you want.
Thanks very much. I'm going to check it out.
I think so. In building my business, I would always hear people say, culture is key, make sure you focus on the culture. And I didn't know exactly what culture was, but I knew enough to deduce that the stronger your culture, the better your company. And it wasn't until I read Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, CEO of Zappos, one of my favorite books, that I really got what culture is. And he described in the book that culture is a feeling. And it's the way that people feel when they walk in, and it's the way that they feel when they walk out at the end of the day. And it's the way they make customers feel when customers are interacting with them. And so that really changed my thinking. And it was like, okay, how do I want people to feel? And at the time I was doing all these things that I thought were helping build the culture. I had a DJ on Fridays, spinning live music in the office. We had a smoothie bar. We had all these things that I thought were helping, but really were not helping anyone feel anything. So I got rid of all that, sat the team down and asked, how do you want to feel when you walk in here every day? And how do you want to feel when you walk out? And so words like loved and supported and invested in and valued and inspired, all these words came up, and kind of narrowed them down, grouped them together, which ones were in common. And so my focus became, how do I make people feel this way? And those feelings were kind of a compass for me. When I was making a decision for the business, I would look at those feelings and I would ask myself, will this decision make people feel this way? And I think that's really important to do before your company grows, tremendously, like pinpointing what are those feelings and what can you do to make people feel that way? Because all of this, before I had figured that out, I was making decisions blindly, like, yeah, we'll sign this contract, we'll do this. And that's how we got to the place where all of a sudden it didn't feel like the company that I thought I had built or wanted to build. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. So do the feelings exercise. It's awesome. Even if it's just you, like, how do you want people to feel? What's important for you to feel when you walk in every day? But yeah, I think I always say, don't focus on the customer. I've never focused on the customer. I focus on the people, because I know if I take care of the people, they'll take care of the customer. And if you're saying customer is number one, the message you're sending to your employees are, you're not, you're number two. Mm-hmm. So I've never, and maybe that's not a good thing, but in building my business, I've never focused on the customer. I've always focused on the team, and it's worked.
I agree with you 100%. And Wegmans would agree with you. They're a $9 billion family grocery chain, right? So, and they're, like you said, Tony Hsieh's Zappos, one of my favorite books too, Delivering Happiness. You look at Southwest Airlines in your neck of the woods, right? I mean, you look at all these companies that stand out. Starbucks, they give the baristas health insurance, with unheard of, right?
Right.
You're right. The message they're sending to the team, wow, I matter. I'm important. I'm number one. you're 100% right. That's going to ripple. That's going to ripple to everybody else. You know, if you're giving a barista health insurance, they're going to be happy. And
Yes.
the customer's going to feel that happiness, right?
Yes.
Know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When I buy shoes from Zappos and I'm communicating with somebody because they don't fit well and they're cracking jokes with me, I love Zappos.
Yeah, I
love Zappos. Where am I going to buy my shoes now? Zappos, right?
Yeah.
A little tiny thing.
Totally.
So you are not only running your business, you are also very involved with Simon Sinek and his company / movement. Start with Why, and it really has taken a life of its own. You know, when his book came out, I mean, I want to say 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
You know, people really weren't talking about why, right? I mean, it really wasn't even a discussion, and he like invented this whole thing where like, oh yeah, it's like it's been there, but we've never really acknowledged it, right? So I was one of the founders of Entrepreneurs Organization here in Rochester, and we brought Simon before the book, right?
Oh, yeah.
We got him for like $1,500 to do a keynote. He was just starting out. He would return my phone calls, and I think a couple of years ago I tried to get him for an Avanti event they were doing, and let's just say it was a little more than $1,500, and I had to talk to his assistant, So it's, but good for him. One of my favorite dinners I had, I was in New York with Cameron Herold, who Cameron Herold. So Cameron's a big. He was one of the first guys at 1-800-GOT-JUNK and built that to.
Oh, I know the company. Yeah.
Yep. And now he does a lot of consulting and work. And so he became friends with Simon, and we were all in New York together and had dinner together. This is once again about 8-9 years ago. What a magical dinner that was.
Yeah.
Just like, I should have videotaped it. But Simon really has built a beautiful company and smartly surrounding himself with people like you so that the mission can be scaled. So tell me about your work with Start With Why.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to maybe when I first met Simon and then kind of what happened from there. So I met him in 2010. Mm-hmm. I had just graduated from the University of Florida. And this, like you probably around the time when you brought him to speak, our local chamber was bringing him. Not many people knew about his work at this point. I had never heard of him. And as a teaser to get the community excited about his visit, there was this Chamber Business of the Year awards lunch, and they had Simon announce the winners of the awards over Skype. So Student Maid won an award that year, and as a part of winning that award, I got to go to this dinner when Simon actually was in town for his speech. So I met him completely, it was pretty by chance, and we talked at this dinner, and he was at that point working on his second book, Leaders Eat Last. And he was fascinated by Student Maid. And I couldn't really understand why, because to me it was just a cleaning company, but he was like, I want to interview you for my book, for Leaders Eat Last. And so just so happened I would be in New York not too long after that, and we met up and became amazing friends. But we just have we have the same view on the way people should be treated in business, and that humanity needs to be brought back into business. And where he really helped me at that point in my life is I didn't understand the why of Student Maid. And it was so frustrating. I can remember being on a plane and, you make small talk with the person next to you, and I'm asking them all about what they do, and we're having a great conversation, and they ask me what I do, and I say I have a cleaning company, and then it was like conversation over. Yeah. They don't want to ask any other questions. And I'm like dying inside. I'm like, ask me something. I want to tell you about my company, because I just didn't know how to articulate it. It was more than a cleaning company, but I didn't know how to explain that. What Simon helped me realize is that at the core of Student Maid, why we're here, why we exist, our just cause, our purpose, all that, is to build leaders. And everything we do at Student Maid, yes, we clean, but it's all about teaching our students the skills that they really need to be successful when they leave. So while they're dusting and while they're cleaning houses and vacuuming and scrubbing stuff, they're also taking classes on things like how to confront somebody, how to be accepting of feedback, how to find your strengths and use them, how to interview and land the job that you want. Like all this stuff that has nothing to do with actual cleaning work, but really gives them a strong foundation to stand on when they leave and start the next chapter in their lives. And so now when I sit next to people on a plane, I'm like, well, I have a company where we focus on building the next generation of leaders. And then they're like, well, tell me more. I'm like, well, and we clean toilets. Right. And then they're like, well, now tell me more because I'm really curious. So he really helped me figure out what, the why behind Student Maid. But as his work continued and as it grew and the movement grew, he was finding that all these organizations had their purposes, but now they were like, okay, what's next? How do we build a culture around this? So he brought me in to kind of serve, help in that area. So I work with a lot of organizations, not all businesses, but all across the gamut, and help them create cultures where people really thrive.
I love it. What a great story. It was almost like destiny, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. I love how you guys figured out the why, because it's not about cleaning toilets. You're educating students through cleaning toilets, but they're getting the education through the whole process.
Exactly.
And it's probably, I don't want to knock any colleges, but it's probably the best education they're getting.
Yeah, it's the soft skills. It's the skills that really are critical to success, but you don't learn in school.
Right. Yeah. That's excellent. So I love it. So now, do you spend a lot of your time, or do you try to balance running Student Maid and going around the country speaking? What does that look like?
Yeah. So 80% of my time, I would say, is spent outside of Student Maid, helping other companies, speaking. Sometimes it's like a keynote. Sometimes it's more consulting work. Sometimes it's facilitating retreats and that kind of thing, really helping teams dive into what's not working. How can we make some improvements here? And as my focus kind of shifted to that, and I really love that work, I kind of felt lost in my company. Like, what is my role here? The business does not need me to live. Hopefully this never happens, but if I get hit by a bus, the business is fine. The people are fine. It will completely be fine without me, which is awesome because that's what you want in your business. But then it's also like, well, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do now? And so I there was a point where I was focused so much on outside of Student Maid that I sort of wasn't focusing on Student Maid, and that didn't feel right. And so really sat down with my team and I asked for their help to identify what's my role here. And so I am called the Chief Vision Officer.
Nice.
And my job is to really make sure I'm clear on where we're going and that the company is positioned to get to that destination. And I'm the idea generator, and I remember at the beginning of Student Maid, that's what I love doing, staying up really late, thinking of all these ideas. And I kind of stopped doing that. And so now I'm back in that place where I'm thinking about what does the next decade look like and what are some things we can do. And so something that we're exploring right now is potentially starting a recruitment arm of our business where our graduates, once they leave Student Maid, we match them to other organizations who are hiring. So it's just like, it feels like a startup again. And it feels good to know my role in the company. And I think that's something else that people don't talk about. Like sometimes in your own business, it is completely normal to be like, what is my job here?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like you're the mad scientist that gets it going. And then, but unlike most entrepreneurs who want to keep control for their ego, you're doing something that I think is just so massively mature, is just, like you said in the beginning, getting vulnerable. Like, hey guys, I'm kind of a fish out of water. What do you think we should do? What should I do? And to be able to put your ego in your back pocket and be able to ask those questions. I think it's so mature. I think it's so amazing. And Patrick Lencioni wrote a book years ago called Getting Naked. And it was of the similar vein, just like, hey, CEOs, leaders, don't be afraid to raise your hand and say, I don't know. I don't understand what that means. I don't understand what I'm doing. What is my role in the company?
Yeah.
And that you involve them and you engage them in the process. And they even came up with a title for you, which sounds pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
But now you are very clear. But more importantly, they are really clear of your role. So they're not waiting for Kristen for answers and for delegations. They know what to do and they know what you're doing. Well, there's no like, oh yeah, Kristen's only working 20 hours a week and making all this money. Now it's very clear. Well, okay, here's her role in Student Maid, but we also know that she's working really hard on these other things as well. So that clarity's got to be fantastic for everyone.
Yep. Yeah, and I love what you said. I think it's like anytime I've grown the most or the company's grown the most, it's when we've been willing to be vulnerable and say out loud, I don't know what we're doing here. Can you help me? And that's something I would say that's a key ingredient at Student Maid, vulnerability. I mean, you have to make people feel safe, and you can only do that by being vulnerable yourself as the leader.
It sounds like a core value, whether
Absolutely.
It's on the wall or not. It sounds like it's definitely in the DNA, and a really good lesson for Avanti listeners, because I think a trap of a lot of CEOs, entrepreneurs, is that they feel the need to play God. They feel the need to have all the answers because that's the leader. I'm supposed to have all the answers. When in fact, in my opinion, I think yours too, a great leader is going to say, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
That does sound like a huge issue. What do you think we should do about it? Right? Just giving it back, and a friend of mine who is a business coach, and he's about 75, and I call him like my sage advisor, He's like my Yoda, I call him. He doesn't like that, but he said he feels like the best question a leader can ask, one of the managers or whoever is just say, what are you working on, and how can I help support you? Or, where are you in that in that mission that we were talking about, and how can I help you get there? Yeah. What a twist, right? Instead of saying, here's what you need to do and get it done by now.
Right.
I know you're working on this. How can I help support you? I think that's such a great question for a leader to learn.
Yeah, I call it asking instead of telling. Like I try to remind myself before every meeting, I need to ask questions and not tell. Like, can't tell people what to do. It's, if have you thought of, what else have you thought of? Have you thought of this versus make sure you include this? It's such a different way to frame it.
Yep. Kristen, I could talk to you for like hours and hours and hours. I hope to meet you someday. The entrepreneurs, as you probably know, have a very short attention span. So I try to keep this around a half an hour. I think we've gone over. But this has been so interesting, such great lessons for the Avanti tribe. Truly appreciate you and what you're doing. I am out of my 30s and into my 40s. I wish I was smart as you at age 30. I was nowhere near. So I'm just excited to see where you're going to go from here, because it sounds like you are just starting out.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So if people want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, hire you as a speaker, buy your book, etc., what are the best ways to connect with you?
Yeah, so all my social media is Kristen Hadeed. KristenHadeed.com is my website. StudentMaid.com is the business. Book, Permission to Screw Up. You can get it anywhere books are sold, and Amazon. That'll do it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. And I know we're going to stay in touch.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on your massive success. Thanks. And I also want to thank you, Avanti listeners, for listening to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I truly appreciate your time as well. And if you want to listen to this again, go to the show notes, and you could click on Kristen's link to her site and buy her book, etc. Go to AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Make it a great day and stay awesome.
Thank you for listening. Head over to AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com for show notes and more helpful advice from entrepreneurs like you. Continue to find your entrepreneurial rhythm at the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast.